Welcome to the Prana Show. I'm your host, Louise Balodi.
And I'm Alan Balodi.
I'm Isabella Sarah Balodi. And I'm Gabrielle Balodi.
Bruce Lipton, PhD, is an internationally recognized leader in bridging science and spirit. Stem cell biologist, bestselling author of The Biology of Belief, and recipient of the 2009 Goy Peace Award, he has been a guest speaker on hundreds of TV and radio shows, as well as keynote presenter for national and international conferences. Dr. Lipton began his scientific career as a cell biologist. He received his PhD degree from the University of Virginia at Charlottesville before joining the Department of Anatomy at the University of Wisconsin's School of Medicine in 1973. Dr. Lipton's research on muscular dystrophy, studies employing cloned human stem cells, focused upon the molecular mechanisms controlling cell behavior. An experimental tissue transplantation technique developed by Dr. Lipton and colleague Dr. Ed Schultz and published in the journal Science was subsequently employed as a novel form of human genetic engineering. In 1982, Dr. Lipton began examining the principles of quantum physics and how they might be integrated into his understanding of the cell's information processing systems. He produced breakthrough studies on the cell membrane, which revealed that this outer layer of the cell was an organic homologue of a computer chip, the cell's equivalent of a brain. His research at Stanford University School of Medicine between 1987 and 1992 revealed that the environment operating through the membrane controlled the behavior and physiology of the cell, turning genes on and off. His discoveries, which ran counter to the established scientific view that life is controlled by the genes, presaged one of today's most important fields of study, the science of epigenetics. Two major scientific publications derived from these studies defined the molecular pathways connecting the mind and body. Many subsequent papers by other researchers have since validated his concepts and ideas. Dr. Lipton's novel scientific approach transformed his personal life as well. His deepened understanding of cell biology highlighted the mechanisms by which the mind controls bodily functions and implied the existence of an immortal spirit. He applied this science to his personal biology and discovered that his physical well-being improved and the quality and character of his daily life was greatly enhanced. Dr. Lipton has taken his award-winning medical school lectures to the public and is currently a sought-after keynote speaker and workshop presenter. He lectures to conventional and complementary medical professionals and lay audiences about leading-edge science and how it dovetails with mind-body medicine and spiritual principles. He has been heartened by anecdotal reports from hundreds of former audience members who have improved their spiritual, physical, and mental well-being by applying the principles he discusses in his lectures. He is regarded as one of the leading voices of the new biology.
Hello.
Hi, Bruce.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm a very happy guy, and to be here with you, I'm even more happy because I know we're going to have a wonderful time. Hi.
Hi.
All right.
Yeah.
So we're ready for this? All right.
Yes, I am ready. I have all my notes and everything. So
You can see even now the sound is getting a little bit...
yeah, it's a little bit...
I think if we turn the video off, the sound will be much, much better. Okay?
Okay, perfect. This is a topic very close to my heart. So you can hear me okay, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Hi, Prana Boosters. Today's featured guest Prana Booster is the inspirational, brilliant, loving, courageous Dr. Bruce Lipton. Thank you so much for being on the Prana Boost show today. I'm so grateful to have you here with us to share space and time together. And I wanted to tell you that you're kind of a rock star. You're kind of famous in our house. You just don't...
I wish I was a rock star. That would be more fun than a scientist, but rock star is a good idea.
Well, I got to tell you, when I told my daughters that I had you booked for the show, their reaction was, "Oh, Mom, you love that guy and his epigenetics."
Well, epigenetics is a wonderful bit of knowledge that frees us from so much belief in being victims and really reveals how powerful we are in controlling our lives.
Yes, and they're only 9 and 11, and they knew about you, so I was really
Well,
grateful
I'm
for
glad
that.
that they're starting out that way because that's the foundation for creating a better planet is raising children with consciousness, and that's really one of the necessary things that we must start really, putting our time into is helping children get the best start.
Yes, absolutely. And that's actually my biggest passion. So, mindful parenting and conscious parenting is very close to my heart. And many days when I wanted to give up or people tell me that I'm doing it wrong or it's not important, I knew in my heart that this is honestly one of the most important things on the planet is to raise our children in this way. So I'm so inspired by you, and I'm excited to bring your teachings to parents everywhere, because I think it's vital for parents and grandparents and any caregiver of children to understand this new information for raising children and raising our own, consciousness.
I think, as you said, it's very important for raising children, but it's also the same information is very important for us as adults because it could, an understanding of that programming period, we can see how powerfully that information has influenced our lives and that we can change that programming. Which is really necessary to regain power back over our lives because essentially we've been programmed to be victims and that's disempowering. So it turns out that's not true. We are creators of our own life and our own health, and understanding that is empowering for sure.
Yes, and I'm so grateful that you're here today because I talk about it all the time and I even tell family members and everything, but I don't have the exact science behind it. But I already believe in it and I live it and I practice it, but I didn't have, that information to back it up. So that's the reason that you're here. I wanted to share with you that when I became pregnant almost 13 years ago with my first daughter, and I had always dreamed of peace and being a peacemaker and nonviolence. But right away when I was pregnant, I really took a stand, and I somehow had the awareness and the intuitive guidance that my baby was like marinating in my emotions and my thoughts and my ideas and my fears. And energetically, I knew that I was already parenting her, even though, I was just pregnant. And so being mindful of my energy and my husband's energy and our surroundings was very important to us, in addition to eating well and taking supplements. And I remember one time my husband and I were kind of arguing and we were stressed and it was getting heated. And I said, we need to calm down. The baby will hear us. And he was like, what? What baby? He's like, are you crazy? And so I understand, everything that you teach about this, and I help families take responsibility for their lives and, create an environment of mindful living. And I wanted to know if we could talk about, in your book, Biology of Belief, where you talk about conscious parenting and parents actually as genetic engineers, you share that recognizing the role that the prenatal environment plays in creating disease or, programming our children before they're even born, forces a reconsideration of genetic determinism. Can you discuss this more for me?
Yeah, well, it's very important because the general belief that the public holds is a belief that's not valid at all, except that everyone believes it. And that is the idea that genes control the characteristics of our lives, not just our physical characteristics, but also our behavioral and emotional characteristics. And I say, well, what's the consequence of that? And I say, well, the most important is this. The belief that genes control our lives was a science called genetic determinism, which is now found to be flawed, is really a belief that makes us victims. And I said, well, what do you mean it makes us victims? Because it says, well, look, genes turn on and off, and they control who you are, and you don't control the genes. And I go, well, okay, that's one. But number two is, as far as we know, we didn't pick the genes we came with. And if we don't like the characteristics we have, you just can't go and change the genes. And then you realize, oh my God, I have no power over my life because the genes are controlling it, and I have no control over them. And that's, unfortunate, because that's when people start to get sick and everything and believe the sickness is out of their control because it's being manipulated by their genes, cancer and stuff like that. And it turns out, well, this is totally false. It's a completely false understanding. I mean, let's start off with a simple understanding about genes. Genes are blueprints to make the protein building blocks of our body. There are like 100,000 different proteins. It's sort of like a giant Lego kit of proteins. And how you assemble these protein Lego pieces together create different things. So I can assemble some of them and make a muscle cell, and I can create some other different amino acids in a different way, protein building blocks, and create a bone cell, or I can take these proteins and create a nerve cell, and all of a sudden you start to realize, oh, these are the building blocks of life. And I go, yeah, they're physical proteins, and genes are the blueprints to make them. And I go, why is it relevant? Because we've given the concept of genes powers that they don't have at all. For example, we talk about genes turning on and turning off and controlling our lives. And I go, look, a gene is a blueprint. So to put it in perspective, think about this. You go to an architect's office. She's working on a blueprint. You lean over her shoulder and you ask the architect, you say, is your blueprint on or off? And she would look at you like, what, are you crazy? It's a blueprint. There's no on and off. It's a blueprint. I go, precisely. Genes are not on and off devices. They make no decisions. They have no control over their own activity. And this is a radical departure from the belief system. Oh, a gene caused cancer, and a gene did this, and a gene did that. And I say, because these beliefs that we bought are the ones that make us a victim, saying, well, you have no control over this, and therefore, when you're a victim, you have no power. And being powerless, you are forced to seek healing from other people who supposedly have the power, so-called the medical doctor. And I go, well, that's a belief, but it's totally false. The new understanding is the environment and our perception of the environment are the keys that control our genetic activity. Now, I say this based on experiments that I first did, 1967, that was 49 years ago now.
Wow.
I was cloning stem cells, and people have heard of stem cells, so let me just clarify what a stem cell is. A stem cell is another word for embryonic cell. It's a multi-potential cell. It can become anything. And I say, but why would I, as an adult, have stem cells in my body or embryonic cells? And the answer is simply this. It's because every day, every one of us loses hundreds of billions of our cells from normal attrition, normal aging and dying. So every day we're losing hundreds of billions of cells normally. And obviously, if you want to stay alive, you must replace hundreds of billions of cells every day. Otherwise, it's a loss. You're going to die. And I say, well, where do we get the replacement cells? I said, that's why we have stem cells, embryonic cells in our body. So as we lose cells normally, the stem cells will divide and replace them. So imagine a stem cell as an embryonic cell. 49 years ago, I would take one stem cell, put it in a culture dish by itself, and it would divide every 10 or 12 hours. So first there was one cell, then it would divide, then it would be two, and then it would divide again, 4, 8, 16. The population keeps doubling every time it divides. And after a week, I've got like 50,000 cells in the petri dish, but guess what? They all came from the same parent. So I have 50,000 genetically identical cells. Now here's an experiment that changed my life and actually presaged the new science called epigenetics. So first let me explain the experiment and then how powerful it is. Okay. And that is this. I would have 50,000 genetically identical cells from my cloning study. I would take those cells, split them up into 3 different petri dishes, and I would change the environment in which the cells live. You say, what do you mean environment? I go, well, cells are like fish. They live in a fluid environment. That's why if you cut yourself open, all the fluids start to leak out because it's like an aquarium inside. So I say, if I'm going to grow cells in a petri dish, I want to make the environment the same or close as it can be to what they experience when they're inside the body. So I make what is called a culture medium. And culture medium is the fluid in which I grow cells. And I say, yeah, but what position do you use to make culture medium? I say, whatever organism you get the cells from, you look at the blood in that organism and see what the components are. And then you make a synthetic version of that blood, which is called the culture medium. So if I grow mouse cells, I look at the composition of mouse blood and make culture medium based on that. If I grow human cells, then I look at human blood and notice chemical composition and try to, replicate that in the culture medium. So culture medium, by definition, is the equivalent of blood. Well, here's what's unique. let's go back to the fact that I have 50,000 genetically identical cells, put them into 3 different petri dishes, but in each dish, I change the chemical of the culture medium, the environment. I change it a little bit in each of the 3 dishes, so they're not exactly the same environment. In one dish, my stem cells form muscle. In the next dish, my stem cells form bone. And in the third dish, my stem cells form fat cells. I go, yeah, but what is the meaning of that? Well, the answer to the most profound question is what controls the fate of the cells? Well, the conventional answer is genes control that. I go, yeah, but here's a situation where I have genetically identical cells in 3 different environments, and I get 3 different fates: bone, muscle, fat cells. Like, so what controls the fate? And the answer is, well, obviously not the genes. They all were the same. The only thing that was different was the environment, the culture medium, the chemistry. And all of a sudden you start to say, wait, then this action of gene is a response to the environment. I go, absolutely. And this changes the whole belief system from the beginning where we say, oh, genes control our fate. Now I say, no, it's the environment that controls the genes. And I say, well, what's the relevance of this? You know, these are cells in a plastic petri dish in a laboratory. What does this have to do with me as a human being? Well, Tina, let's look at a simple fact. When we look at ourselves in a mirror and we see ourselves looking back, we say, yeah, that's one single human, a single organism. I go, well, true, but it's also a misrepresentation for this reason. A human body, a human organism, is made out of 50 trillion cells. The cells are the living entity. The human, by fullest definition, is a community of 50 trillion cells. So when you say Tina, you might represent one human with the name Tina. In truth, you're actually representing 50 trillion cells forming a community that has the physical structure and appearance of a human. So the cells are the living entity. And so I say, why is this relevant? Then the jokey part of this is that, well, the human body with 50 trillion cells inside is like a skin-covered petri dish with 50 trillion cells, and it's got culture medium. I say, yeah, the culture medium is called the blood.
Wow.
I go, oh. So I say, is there any difference in regard to the activity of the cells in a plastic dish or a skin-covered dish? I say, no. In either case, the fate of the cell is controlled by the composition of the blood, the culture medium. And then I go, okay, in a human, my skin-covered dish with 50 trillion cells inside has blood in it, but then the most important question is, well, what controls the chemistry of the blood? Because the experiments showed that the chemistry of the blood controlled the genetics. So I said, well, then in my skin-covered dish, what controls the chemistry of the blood? I go, well, the brain. The brain is the chemist. It adds things and controls the composition of the blood. Then we're left with the last but the most important question. And that, Tina, is, well, what chemistry should the brain create in the blood? And then I go, that's dependent on the mind. The mind holds an image of the world, interprets the world, and the mind's interpretation of the world is translated by the brain into chemistry that goes into the blood, and the chemistry in the blood controls the genetics of the cell. And I said, well, what's the relevance of this? I said, well, first of all, we're not victims of our genes. The genes aren't controlling me. I'm controlling the genes. By what? My environment and my perception. I say, well, significance is I can change my environment and I can change my perceptions. I go, well, what does that mean? It means I control my genetics. The genes don't control me. I control the genetics. If I change my environment and change my thoughts, I will change my genetics. And the answer, that's absolutely 100% true. And the significance then all of a sudden says, I'm not a victim of my genes, I am the master. And if my genes are not performing well, such as sickness or illness or some kind of disease is present, we have in the past said, oh, the genes have caused this. Like there was a gene for cancer, or a cancer gene. Well, first of all, there are no cancer genes. Genes don't cause anything. Genes are blueprints to make building blocks. What you do with the building blocks, how you use the building blocks, which building blocks you should make, is really based on the mind. What are you trying to create? What are you responding to? Because the picture in the mind is translated by the brain into chemistry that controls the genetics. So it's like when we were young, we most of us played with something called paint by numbers, where you had like a little picture on a piece of canvas with the outline of the picture, and then inside all carved up into little areas with numbers inside. And then you got a paint kit, and the paint had numbers. And when you put the right paint into the right little numbered spot on the picture, and you do this, you fill in the picture, and then lo and behold, you created this beautiful masterpiece of art. And I go, oh, so that's paint by numbers. I go, yeah. So you want to understand biology? At the simplest, most easiest level is biology is paint by numbers in reverse. Meaning, first you start with the picture in your mind, and then the brain breaks down the picture into numbers matching neurochemicals, like paints, that are released into the body, and the neurochemicals shape the body to match the picture. So it's paint by numbers in reverse. Whatever picture you're holding in your head is turned into a physical expression inside your body. And I said, well, what's the relevance? I said, well, you're the one that controls the picture in your head. If you put negative pictures in your head, you're going to get a negative expression of the body. And you put positive pictures in your head, you get a positive expression of the body. And all of a sudden it says, oh my God, that's mind over body. And I go, yes, and this is the science of it. The science is the mind's image is converted into chemistry, which makes up the culture medium called blood, which in turn controls the genetics. So far from being victims, we are actually, unbeknownst to us, we are masters of our life, because we're the ones that can change the picture. And you could go from a scary picture to a happy picture, and in so doing actually change your genetics. Or you can go from a happy picture to a scary picture and again change your genetics. And when it comes down to it, we've been giving genes all the credit. So let's say, for example, we say, oh, there's a cancer gene. Let's say the BRCA1 cancer gene. And I say, what's the belief? Oh, if I have that gene, I'm going to get the cancer. And I go, well, what does that make people do? And I say, well, people like Angelina Jolie saying, oh my goodness, my mother had cancer, my grandmother had the cancer, my aunt has the cancer, and they all have the gene, and I have the gene, so I'm going to have a mastectomy, and I'm going to cut my breasts off, so I'm not going to get breast cancer. And I go, well, this is an interesting response, but the first question is this: does the breast cancer gene cause breast cancer? And the answer is no. What do you mean, no? I go, because only 50% of the women that have the gene get the cancer. Wow. And I say, well, significance of that? Well, 50% of the women have the gene and they don't get the cancer. Point is very simple. Having the gene does not imply that you get the cancer. And all of a sudden it says, well, then what's the difference? I go, the difference is, what is your belief? And Angelina Jolie had the belief that the gene causes cancer will create the cancer whether she had the gene or not. So in her case, the mastectomy was like, okay, I'm going to try to prevent the cancer by removing my breast. It may or may not actually have a protective effect. She still may end up with the cancers that will affect her and her uterus and her ovaries as well, the female reproductive tract. So what's the point? Let go of the belief that genes control the character and fate of your life, and own the understanding of a new science which is called epigenetics. And I say, well, sounds like genetics, what's the difference? Here's the difference. Old science, the belief in genetic control, which literally means control by genes. Old science, your genes determine your fate in life. Again, making you victim, because it's not you controlling them, it's them controlling you. And I say, and what's the new science? It sounds the same, but it's called epigenetic control. I go, well, what does that mean? Epi means above. So when I say epigenetic control, I'm actually saying control above the genes. I go, so what's the above the genes? I say, the mind and the environment are what control the genes. I go, oh, well, wait, I can change the environment and I can change my mind. I go, precisely. In other words, you're the one that has mastery over your health and your genetics. And yet, if you buy the belief that you are a victim, or you buy the belief that you could get the cancer, or you buy the belief that in some way you're not healthy, that belief can actually manifest the experience. So a person can go to a doctor and get a diagnosis saying they have a terminal cancer, find out later that the diagnosis was incorrect, but guess what? They created a terminal cancer because they believe in it. You go, belief can create gene activity. I go, you're all familiar with it already. The concept of what is called the placebo effect. Placebo effect. I go, yeah. Placebo effect is the belief that this new drug or this new treatment or whatever therapeutic thing you're looking for, this new one is going to heal you. You believe in it. Oh, great. I take this drug that's supposed to heal me. I get better. And then later I find that the drug was just a sugar pill. I go, what healed you? Well, the answer is obviously it wasn't the sugar pill. It was the belief in the sugar pill. And everybody goes, yeah, placebo effect. That's like the expression of a positive belief. This drug is going to have a positive effect, and it does, even though the drug had no effect at all. The positive result didn't come from the drug, it came from the belief. And everybody goes, yes, placebo. I got it. And I go, yeah, but what people don't understand is what is the influence of a negative belief? Because we've only been talking about positive belief, placebo, healing. And I need to enforce this in very heavy words so people get it. And that is this. A negative belief, which is referred to in science as a nocebo, is equally powerful to a positive belief in shaping our life, but it works in the opposite direction. As much as a placebo can save your life, a nocebo, a negative belief, can actually cause any illness and death. It's the power of the belief, whether it's positive or negative. That's just determines which outcome you're going to get. But it's the belief which is the absolute controlling factor. So a positive belief can heal you, and a negative belief, on the other hand, can actually kill you. And all of a sudden you say, but how does that work? And I go, epigenetics. The mind takes a belief, converts it into chemistry that complements that belief. Positive chemistry for a positive belief, negative disability chemistry when you have a negative belief. Whatever belief you're sharing in your head is going to the 50 trillion cells in your body via chemical messengers by the brain that translate your belief into chemistry. And then your body becomes a physical expression of that belief. A healthy belief leads to a healthy body. And a negative belief, as I say, can even cause every disease, including cancer, and can kill you. And all of a sudden it says, oh my God, it wasn't the genes that controlled this. It was the belief that we hold. And I say, yes, and this is so important because as we change our beliefs, we change our genetics. And therefore, understanding this gives us the tool, the idea, the mechanism of how do I create the life that I want, the healthy life? And the answer is, first of all, start to recognize that most of the beliefs that is operating on this planet with, most of them, according to psychologists, are negative, disempowering, and self-sabotaging beliefs. And therefore, the conventional beliefs of our world are actually undermining our health. We change those beliefs in our mind, and we can absolutely take back control of our lives.
Wow. So you pretty much summed it all up. I understand all of it, and so when I talk to my clients, and I talk to families, and I talk to my family, my extended family, like my parents, and the one thing that I have a hard time understanding is why people are resistant to raising our standards and believing in a new type of medicine, because I do appreciate modern medicine. I do understand. You and I both know that it's wonderful for trauma and things like that, and there's been many advancements, but the conventional medical model that you talk about, where we're controlled, by where we believe, and we were taught that we're controlled by our genes. I'm interested in stopping it in its tracks. I have family members, like my children's grandparents or whatever, who sometimes they will look at the kids and tell them what happens. Oh, this is what happens when you get old, or this is what happens, everybody gets arthritis, or, one time I have to put my dad on the line, but he'll probably listen, but he had to have a cataract surgery, and he literally told my daughters that everybody has to have it, like they're going to have it. And I feel
that is very unfortunate.
Yeah.
Because that is called programming.
Yes. And I feel like I sort of have to, I do trust the divine in them, but I also feel that I'm there to guide them. And, I look at them and I say, that doesn't have to be true. We're not going to believe that. We don't need to believe in that. That's true for Papa. Things like that. These are like my conversations, right? And so I understand, the importance of not programming these beliefs into them, and incorporating these modern scientific advancements that you talk of, into our lives. But I see people being very resistant and very accepting of negative reality. And so, for instance, like, I remember when my girls were little, the pediatrician, we used to go to a pediatrician, and years ago, and he used to say, on average, a child gets 8 to 12 ear infections. And I've seen parents like write that down, like, okay, that's coming. And I was the person who was like, why does that even have to be? That's not right. Like, I'm not going to accept that. That doesn't even sound good. But they accept this as normal, and they accept doctors as all-knowing and modern medicine. And I wonder how they're so trusting of it if people are so sick.
Well, the thing is that since we just said the mind is controlling this, and I think this is the biggest problem in the whole world, which is what you just touched on, is this.
Right.
Yes, we have a mind, but the mind is not a single thing. The mind is two interdependent elements that work in harmony with each other. Each element has its own function, which is different than the other one, and each one learns in a different way. So the subdivision of the mind, if we want to do a simple version of it, is that there's a conscious mind and a subconscious mind.
Right.
And these are profoundly important to understand, because this is where all the troubles of our life comes from, is combining them and saying a single mind, and then trying to figure out why, if I'm aware that a positive thinking would heal me, why didn't I get well, is because that's not how it works. So let's go back and summarize the meaning of the two different parts of the mind.
Okay.
The latest evolution of our nervous system in a human is right behind our forehead, and it's called the prefrontal cortex. It's a lobe of brain tissue, as I said, right behind your forehead. This is the site of where consciousness comes from, primary. And consciousness, the conscious mind, is the mind that's connected to you, your personal mind. You as a unique individual on the planet, your conscious mind is different than everybody else's conscious mind. Your conscious mind is the seat of your spirituality. Where does our spirit really interplay into the nervous system? I would have to say, well, physically, it would be in the conscious mind. The conscious mind is a very powerful mind, and has its function is creativity. Let's just compare it to the other mind, and I'll come back to it with a different function. The other mind is the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind, which represents about 90% of the brain anyway, is the primal mind that was there before consciousness. So the subconscious is the basic mind. And the name subconscious simply literally means below the level of consciousness. So the behaviors running from the subconscious mind don't go through consciousness. They're just automatic behaviors. You can do them unconsciously, so to speak. You can do it blindfolded. These are behaviors that are totally controlled without conscious involvement. It's like push the button, play the program, and that's the way it unfolds. So conscious mind is not the creative mind, really. It has minimum creativity, but maximum habitual function, meaning habits, the habits that we learn, or the instincts we are born with, which are built-in habits, are part of the subconscious mind. So when you learn how to do something, that program goes into the subconscious. So to give you an example, you learned how to walk when you were an infant. Once you learned how to walk, you never had to relearn how to walk again. You know how to walk every day of your life. You could be 150 years old. You still got to know how to walk. And I said, when did you learn that? I said, when you were an infant. Once the program was in, it's in. So the tendency, unfortunately, is a lot of people say subconscious is the evil mind. No. Subconscious is the record mind. It's just a recording device. And its function is to learn a behavior and then push the button and play the behavior without even thinking about it, making it automatic, like walking or driving the car or even saying ABC. Once you learned it, you don't have to rethink and learn it again. It's just push the button. You can repeat it anytime. So conscious mind's creative. Subconscious mind's habitual. And the habitual mind is a very positive thing. I mean, basically, as I said, once you learn how to walk, you don't have to relearn how to walk. It's permanently part of the subconscious. But also recognize this is the other side, is if you have a negative belief, it also becomes a program, and you don't have to learn how to do it. It'll just automatically create behavior that is associated with negative belief, okay? So now let's go back and say this. I have two minds, conscious mind and subconscious mind. Conscious mind is creative. And I go, that's you. That's the spiritual mind. And I said, well, what do you mean by creative? And I said, well, what's creative about the conscious mind is it can see into the future. You can manifest an idea of what you want. So I say, Tina, tell me what you want out of your life. And you say, oh, I want this. I want a great relationship. I want to be healthy. I want to have a great job. And I go, well, that's creative thinking. You're thinking about something that it doesn't exist yet. It's in the future. And the conscious mind could also go in the past. So I can say, so what did you do last year or something? And you can go backwards. So conscious mind has this ability to travel to the future, travel to the past, or even just travel into some other place. You can sit here and have a thought about something, and when your conscious mind is thinking, it's actually engaged in creative characteristics. And I go, and what about the other mind? I say, oh, that's the automatic behavior mind. I say the difference between the two simply is that the conscious mind is like, you're the pilot, you have your hands on the wheel, you're driving the vehicle toward your destination of creativity. And I say, and the subconscious mind go, oh, that's autopilot. And I say, what does that mean? I say, well, if you're not paying attention, most of the behaviors that we do are already programmed in the subconscious mind. So the subconscious can carry out walking without you thinking, okay, take left foot and move it in front of right foot, now move right foot. You don't have to go through that. It's automatic. It'll do it by itself. So we have the automatic mind and the control mind. Now here's the problem. The conscious mind, I said, wasn't time bound. It could think into the future and go back into the past. So I say, Tina, what are you doing on Saturday at 1 o'clock? If you actually are going to answer that question, let's face a simple fact. The answer to that question is not generally outside of you, it's inside your head. So if you're going to answer, what am I doing at Saturday at 1 o'clock, you go through like this little Rolodex in your mind thinking, okay, Saturday, what am I doing Saturday? And you get the answer, and I go, wait a minute. To answer the question, where did you go? And the answer is inside. I go, yeah, but if your conscious mind's busy inside thinking, then who's controlling your life? Let's say you're walking down the street and you have a thought. Your conscious mind now goes inside. Does that mean you just stop walking and you freeze? Going to go on because conscious mind is engaged in thinking? I go, no, you can continue walking. Well, yeah, the subconscious mind knows how to walk and knows how to watch out for things. It's a million times more powerful a computer than the conscious mind anyway. So the subconscious mind can drive the car where you have a thought. It can walk. It could do your job when you have a thought, because anything you've learned how to do is a habit. So basically, when you're having a thought, you let go of the wheel. You're no longer the pilot. When you're having a thought, the autopilot subconscious kicks in and plays the programs of life that you already learned how to do. Okay, and I go, wow, okay, very interesting. Now here comes two most important facts that then make sense. And number one is this, is that the conscious mind, the creative mind, when it's busy thinking, allows the program to take over, the learned programs. And I go, learned programs? Yeah, I said, when did you learn programs of behavior in life? And I go, the first 7 years of our life, the brain is not functioning at the level of consciousness, which is a higher brain vibration, energy vibration, which you can read by putting wires on your head. And we call that electroencephalograph, EEG. I'm reading brain activity. Okay, well, consciousness is a higher vibration than children generally operate at. Children 7 years and younger operate at a lower vibration than consciousness called theta. And theta is associated with a characteristic of imagination. So a child, let's say a 5-year-old child, is riding a broom, but to the child it's a horse. And then the mother says, give me the broom back. And the child looks at the mother like, I don't know what you're talking about, because to the child at that moment, imagination, that broom is not a broom, that's actually a horse. So, or a tea party where
Right.
this is a mud pie. Well, it's not mud, it's an apple pie or a lemon meringue pie, whatever you want. That's your imagination. A child operates at that. I go, well, that's interesting. But then I say, the most important fact about theta, in addition to the fact that it's imagination, is that it's hypnosis. And I say, well, meaning? The first 7 years of a child's life, it is programmed how to behave, how to become a member of a family, how to become a functional member of a community. Not through education, books, study. It learns by observing the mother, the father, the siblings, and the community, observing their behavior.
Right.
and then copying it, downloading it into the subconscious. So the fundamental programs in your subconscious, the behavior, how you respond to life, are not coming from your creative conscious mind. The subconscious programs were learned by observing your mother, your father, your family, etc. So then I say, oh my goodness, and the basic behaviors in the subconscious mind are actually didn't come from your wishes and desires at all. It came by observing other people's behaviors. Relevant? Well, their behaviors may not support anything that you want in your life. It's other people's behavior. I go, okay, yeah, but I'm going to use my conscious mind, so I don't care about the programs in the subconscious. I go, oh, now that is where the problem comes from, and here's what it is. Science has recognized that we spend 95% of the time in thought. I said, wait, what does that mean? I said, 95% of the day, the conscious mind is not driving the vehicle because it's in thought, inside, thinking. I said, well, that means that we just sit still for 95%? I said, no, you carry on all of your life. You're still walking, driving a car, talking, doing your job. I said, well, how am I doing that if the conscious mind's busy? I go, oh, because all those are controllable by the subconscious. I go, oh, so the moment I'm thinking, 95% of the day, I let go of the wheel, the autopilot subconscious kicks in, takes control of the vehicle, but it runs the vehicle based on programs, not of our creation, but of programs that we got from other people. And if those programs are disempowering or self-sabotaging or limiting, which psychologists tell us about 70% are, and that means 95% of the day, we're not going toward our wishes and desires, we're playing programs, and most of those are self-sabotaging. And you say, well, that's silly. I would observe that if I was playing programs, self-sabotaging, I wouldn't do those programs. I go, yeah, if you observed it. I go, that's the problem. Why are you playing the subconscious programs? The answer is because the conscious is busy thinking inside your head, not paying attention. And therefore, when the behaviors are coming from the subconscious, we are the ones that don't see them because they're automatic behaviors and the conscious mind wasn't paying attention anyway. And I go, the story that I tell in the class and most people get, and this is the most powerful and profound story and simple, is this. Most of us have had a friend and we knew our friend's behavior very, very well. And we also knew our friend's parent. And one day we start to see that our friend has the same behavior as their parent. We get very excited, of course, and have to tell our friend. So we say something, hey, Bill, you're just like your dad. And then I say, you back away from Bill. Bill goes totally ballistic and says, how can you compare me to my dad? Most people laugh. And I go, yeah, because most people have the experience, and that's why I tell the story. And I was going to tell you this. Most profound story in the world. Point. Everyone else can see that Bill behaves like his dad. The only one who doesn't see it is Bill. I said, explain that. I said, I just did. I said, Bill spends 95% of the time in thought. That means 95% of the behavior comes from the program that I got. Yeah, the basic program he got from his father. So he's playing his father's program. Why doesn't he see it? And I said, because 95% of the time, his conscious observing mind is engaged in thought and therefore not observing. So the behavior that's playing 95% of the day, which is not programs that we put in there with our wishes and desires, they were downloaded from our family and our community, they run our lives. And when they're running our lives, we're the ones that don't see it. Point. If most of them are negative programmings, which psychologists would tell you they are, then recognize in 95% of the day, you could be sabotaging your life and you are the one that doesn't see it. You and me, all of us, we're Bill. Every day we're playing about 95% of our life from subconscious and not observing it. Yet every now and then we do observe it. Yeah, I know you're familiar with it because every now and then you see yourself and go, oh my God, I just behaved like my mother, or I just behaved like my father. It's like almost embarrassing. It's like, ooh, I didn't mean to do that. And I say, well, that's rare when you catch it, but most of the day you are doing it anyway. And I go, what's the relevance? Well, your conscious mind has your wishes and desires and destination. Subconscious mind's got programs, most of them self-sabotaging. You don't see it. 95% of the day you are sabotaging yourself. You have no awareness that you're involved with that. And I say, what's the significance? It says, I wake up in the morning with wishes and desires. I want to be in love. I want to have great health. I want to have a wonderful job. I say, great. First thing in the morning, good thinking, conscious thinking. I say, then you go out, you work all day, you come home, and tail dragging between your leg, worn out, tired, not getting to that destination. And what are you left to think at that day at night when you come home? It's like, wow, I went forward seeking wishes and desires, and none of it manifested. And therefore, I am a victim of circumstances of the environment or nature or life of fate, and I'm not in control of my life because I wanted success. I didn't get it. And I go, the only problem was not with the nature or the environment. The problem was 95% of the day we are playing programs that take us away from our destination, and we don't see it, and therefore being invisible programs, we have no awareness that we're sabotaging ourselves. And I go, oh, wow, this is really very powerful, because I've been thinking I was a victim of circumstances when it was my own behavior, invisible as it was, that sabotaged me. And I go, yes, and if you change those behaviors, you can rewrite the whole character of your life. You can go from a life that was hell on planet Earth to a life that is heaven on planet Earth. You have been programmed. All of us have been programmed. Every one of us has been programmed. It's just the way of nature. And this is not a new idea. I have to let people know very clearly. The fact that we have been programmed is, no, that's 400 years of history, meaning the Jesuits for 400 years have said, give me a child until it's 7, and I will show you the man. And I said, what were they saying? We never really emphasized what the heck were they saying. What they were saying is just what I told you. If I program your first 7 years, that program will be the program that will control your life, and therefore my programming your 7 years of first 7 years of life, in a sense, I have programmed the rest of your life, because those programs are going to run 95% of the day, and you will become the program. And therefore I say, wow, we all have been programmed. And the truth, and this is funny and not, is that there's a movie called The Matrix. And The Matrix is like a science fiction story that says we've all been programmed, and that you're given a chance to take a blue pill or a red pill. And the blue pill, when you take it, when you wake back up, you're in the program and life is just the way it's always been. But if you take the red pill, you get out of the program. Well, number one, The Matrix is not a science fiction movie, it's a documentary. We all have been programmed. That is a fact. 7 years, in the first 7 years of our life, because our brain function was in theta, which is a programmable state, we have been programmed for 7 years. Number two, most of us have actually at some time or other in our lives have taken the red pill and got out of the program. I say, yeah, but what was the consequence of getting out of the program? And the answer was, almost inevitably, when we got out of the program, we created heaven on earth. I go, okay, when did we take that red pill? And I go, science has revealed that when we fall deeply in love with somebody, that beginning period, that rush of love, which I refer to as the honeymoon, where life is beautiful. Think about it. No matter how crappy your life is, the moment you meet this person that just turns you upside down and you get so excited and you're in love, I go, the moment you meet them, your life is different. All of a sudden, you're healthier, you're happier, you got lots of energy, and life is like, yesterday miserable, today is like, oh man, it's heaven on earth. I love my life. I'm loving this relationship. I'm so in love. I'm having honeymoon. I go, science has recognized that the experiences that we had in that honeymoon of creating what? Wonderful life, happiness, love, all that beautiful stuff was, guess what? Due to the fact that it is the first time in most people's lives that they stop playing the program, because science has recognized when we fall in love, rather than defaulting to the subconscious, we keep our conscious mind present. It's called being mindful. I said, what does it mean? It says, you keep your conscious mind present. That means it doesn't let go of the wheel. It's driving the vehicle. I go, yeah, but what programs is it using when it's driving the vehicle when the conscious mind is present? I said, wishes and desire programs. I said, guess what? Two people come together. It's the equivalent of taking the red pill. They stop playing the program behavior. They start expressing the wishes and desires between them. And guess what the two create? Heaven on earth. And that's called the honeymoon, where life is the most beautiful thing you could ever imagine being on this planet. Unfortunately, the honeymoon doesn't last for a long time. And the reason is simply this, is because no matter if you're in love or not, you still have life. you still have to think. And at some point, thinking starts cutting back into the relationship. And I go, what happens when you start thinking in the relationship? I said, well, the moment you start thinking, you start playing the programs that you got from your parents and family and community, and most of those are negative. You did not play these programs when you were first falling in love, taking the red pill, because you got out of the program. You stayed conscious. You didn't default into the program. So you and your partner are living on who you really want to be, and the relationship is created out of wishes and desires, and you manifest it, and it's great and beautiful. But then as time wears on, the job, you have to think about the job, the chores, fixing the car, doing all these details. And the moment you start thinking about the details, conscious mind stops controlling the vehicle, and we start playing the programs. And since most of these programs are negative, our partner, remember the story of Bill, everyone else sees Bill acts like his dad, not Bill. If I start behaving like my father in the relationship, and that negative behavior that my father may have had was never part of the relationship, that's why the honeymoon was so beautiful, and then I start playing programs that are negative, my partner sees the program, I didn't see Grandma, well, I didn't see I was acting like my dad. My partner does. And all of a sudden, it changes the nature of the honeymoon. It's no longer the honeymoon because these are negative behaviors that start showing up that were never part of the honeymoon. These negative behaviors almost require compromises like, yeah, I love you, but that behavior really sucks. And then you have to say, well, okay, sometimes my partner plays sucky behavior, so I accept. Other times we really have a great relationship. But that's one behavior. As more and more of the negative behaviors start to manifest because we're spending more and more time thinking, that stretches that honeymoon to a point where, okay, all of a sudden that heaven on earth part seems to disappear, and now it's like regular life again. I go, what happened? Oh, we stopped taking the red pill because we started thinking again. And so I say, basically, what does all this mean? It says this: we have been programmed, and the programmings are mostly negative and disempowering and self-sabotaging, and expressed in our lives as illness, disease, unhappiness, fear, all these other negative things. And that the conscious mind, when it gets out of the program, turns our whole life experience around to create heaven on earth. And yet, inevitably, because thinking causes us to go back to autopilot, we end up playing the programs. And if the programs are disempowering and negative and self-sabotaging, then unconsciously we are destroying our relationships, we're destroying our health, and then we're realizing the world that we live in, that seems to be a scary place for most people. And that is not because that's our wishes and desires, conscious mind. That's because of the beliefs that we have been programmed with by others that shape our lives. And when we change those beliefs that are built in the subconscious mind, we can become re-empowered to take back control of our lives, and in so return not to have a honeymoon just for a short period of time, but if you rewrite those negative programs in your subconscious mind, you could have heaven on earth all the time. So simply think about it this way: just instead of negative programs in my subconscious, what if I replace only positive and programs that support my wishes and desires? And it says, well, when I'm driving the vehicle, I'm going in that direction anyway. And if I start thinking and default to the subconscious, well, in this case, with good programs, I'm still going on a honeymoon. So basically, it says you can have a honeymoon every day of your life once you eliminate the negative programs that are present in your life.
Right. I love your book, The Honeymoon Effect. I think about it. I'm inspired by your love story with your life partner. Are you guys married or no?
We are married because we want to be married,
okay.
Not because there's any church or government involved, which is, that always throws a monkey wrench into a situation because people cannot get along with each other and they'll stay together. Why? Because of the difficulty of creating the separation.
Right.
Just because of all the legal paperwork, banking, blah, blah, blah. And the idea is, if you love somebody, you love somebody. Paperwork or no paperwork has nothing to do with it. And if you change, then at some point, then you have to recognize then maybe this isn't going to work out. And, maybe because their behaviors kick in that weren't playing, and all of a sudden you go, oh, this is not really where I want to be, and they are not interested in changing the behavior, so this may not be the place to go. And if you're married and in a sense of in love, then you're married in your heart, no paper required. And I've been on a honeymoon with my partner Margaret now for 20 years.
Wow.
20 years. How did that happen? Because we both were aware of our programming. So when a negative belief or negative behavior showed up in a relationship, which shows up in other people's relationships, and they just, where did that come from? Who are you? They think when their partner starts showing this behavior. We, Margaret and I, already have an awareness that if it's a negative behavior, it's not really coming from my conscious mind, it's somewhere in the program. So if a negative behavior shows up, rather than getting into an argument over it, we recognize, wait, this is an invisible behavior I just created or she just created based on subconscious programming. It's neither of us intended to have that particular behavior. Therefore, I can't blame her. She can't blame me as like, well, what kind of behavior is that? It's just like being aware, though, oh, you just played this behavior. Is that what you really meant? And all of a sudden, what could be an argument turns into a discussion with an opportunity to reprogram. And if you reprogram those negative ones as they show up in the relationship to turn them into good behaviors, then guess what? The rest of your life, whether you're thinking or not thinking, you're still always on good behavior. And that means you could have the honeymoon relationship without all the negative subconscious beliefs interfering because you can rewrite them.
Right, which is interesting and fascinates me beyond belief because I've been with my husband for this year will be 22 years. And we met when he was 18 and I was 20. So we've been together a very long time. And I remember when we were really young, we used to fight and we had so many patterns that would come up. And I would be crying and I would say to him, I just don't understand. Maybe we're not supposed to be together. And he would look at me and go, well, we always have a really good time when we go to Vegas and when we go on vacation. And it would just make me laugh because it would bring me back to that moment and know that that wasn't who we truly were. Like we didn't want to even be those people why were we even fighting? What were we fighting about? Why was it popping up? And now I understand that, like you say, these are subconscious programs, but I sort of feel like our entire relationship has been deleting, removing, and like cleaning our computer systems, like updating and deleting these viruses and these programs that we have. You know, we've worked so hard to do that. And I think one of the gifts that we are giving our children is, you know, two conscious, mindful, loving parents, you know?
Because now that they're downloading programs, remember that was the whole idea.
Yeah.
Children download from their parents. So if the parents correct their behavior before having the children, then as the children are growing up in the family, then what behavior they're seeing? They're seeing the behavior. Remember, only 5% of the time are we normally controlling our lives with our conscious wishes. So if I want to be a great parent, that's called a conscious parent.
Yeah.
I say, good, I'm going to be a conscious parent. I say, how much of my day am I actually being a conscious parent?
Right.
In a conventional perception, about 5% of the day. I say, well, what's happening the other 95%? I say, I am playing the programs that I got from my parents. Mm-hmm. So I say, yeah, and my kids are observing my behavior 100% of the time. So what does that mean? 5% of the time they see me being the great conscious parent, and 95% of the time they see me engaging in the same behavior that I acquired from my parents and passing it down the next generation. And that's how behavior is passed from generation to generation. We always thought genes were the thing that was passed from generation to generation that controls life. Now we understand, no, learned behavior that becomes part of the subconscious programming is passed on like genes, but it's not genetic, it's behavioral. And yet, since we now know in epigenetics behavior controls genes, then you realize, oh my God, then passing down behavior in a family is as powerful or more powerful than passing the genes down, because the behavior will determine what the gene is, and therefore it really becomes important to recognize that via epigenetic behavior is the primary shaper of our biology. So for example, you look at the fate of what happens to children who are adopted into families with cancer. And the idea is, what's our belief? Cancer is transmitted by genes from family to family. So like Angelina Jolie, I got the BRCA1 gene, my mother had it, and therefore I don't want what she had, so I'm blaming it on the genes. Now we know that behavior is the shaper. So going back to when adopted is brought into a family with the cancers running in that family, the adopted child will get the same family cancer as any of the other kids in the family with the same probability, except guess what? The adopted child comes from totally different genetics. So the passing of behavior in a family is more of a determinant in cancer than other genes. That is why Half the women with the BRCA1 gene have the gene but don't get the cancer. Why? Their behavior does not elicit the negative activity. And in the other half, the behavior is pushing on the formation of a cancer and facilitated by the gene. The gene causes cancer? No. The behavior in activity gene causes the cancer. The behavior itself can eliminate the effect of the gene. That's why I said 50% of the women do never get the cancer but still have the gene. What was the point? Their behavior doesn't support cancer. And all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, we kept looking at genes causing cancer. Now we know that over 90% of cancer has no hereditary linkage at all. Over 90% of cancer is directly due to lifestyle.
Right. I think that's a big, huge epiphany for people to understand, because people believe that they're just stricken down. I mean, they're just, victims, and they'll just could possibly one day get
But
cancer.
Tina, see, that belief is problematic, because the moment you say, I am a victim, then what are you telling your biology, 50 trillion cells? I'm sending them a message saying, I have no power over this cancer.
Right.
The cancer is the belief, and then I have no power over it. That essentially facilitates the cancer for expressing itself. And this becomes a big issue, because there is no such thing as a cancer gene. There is no gene that anybody gets will automatically cause cancer. There is no gene that does that. All genes are connected to the environment. And since we can regulate the environment, then, well, as I said, women with the gene regulate their response to the environment in such a way that the gene has no opportunity to manifest cancer, because it's not supported by the behavior. As simple as that.
But I have a question, because right now, the number one killer, they say, of children, of health is childhood cancer. So are those hereditary, or, what about very little kids that get it? Or is that lifestyle or hereditary or mixture?
It's basically first lifestyle and belief system. You said, well, a little kid, where do they get this belief system? I said, every child is connected to their parents by energy first. They're connected by all systems on this planet. The primary means of communication is reading energy. That's the primary thing. Whether you're a snail or a human, the first communication is reading energy. Yeah. The significance about that is that I can look at energy and I can score it in two different extremes. I can say harmonious energy or disharmonious energy. Harmony versus disharmony. Harmony promotes growth. Energy that is in harmony promotes growth. Energy in disharmony pushes us out of growth and breaks up the community, and which is what causes disease. And I say, children read first the energy of their parents. Look, like a dog, for example, because you say, well, how does a dog read your emotions, feelings, even before you say anything? Dog is reading the vibration. If it's time to go to the vet, try and find the dog. It's like, I'm not going to hang around here. I know it's time to go to the vet. I'm gone, A dog does something wrong. It didn't know it did something wrong, but when the owner of the dog has the concept of, oh my God, you really irritated me, dog, the dog can automatically feel that vibration is like, uh-oh. That's when the dog cowers and the tail goes between the legs. It didn't understand any of the words you said. It only understood the energy. Then I go back and I say, yeah, all organisms use energy as the primary communication, including infants. Infants read energy. Is the environmental energy in that infant in harmony or a state of disharmony? Why? Because the energy in the field is going to be translated into behavior and genetics. And therefore, a child is being affected by the thoughts and behavior of all those important to it, because the child focuses on those people, especially the parents, as the primary source of information about the world in which they live. And therefore we have to recognize, there's a lot of communication between infants and parents, and very profoundly important information, because that information is going to shape the behavior of that child. And as I said, the behavior is passed from parents to children. Children pick it up energetically and verbally. First, energetically, because the words aren't there, but the energy, the vibrations, good vibes, bad vibes, as we would see them in our adult world, are present, and the child is responding to those. So all of a sudden it says, yeah, your thoughts as a parent are influencing your child, even though, it's not, especially when a child is growing in the womb, your thoughts are translated into chemistry, and that chemistry is in the blood, crosses the placenta, and the chemistry of your emotions is now adjusting the genetics of your child in utero. But even after a child is born, the first key in linkage is vibrational communication. So it's not verbal, it's an energy. And this is very powerful language, very, very powerful, shaping the health and fate of that child.
Right. And in your book, I love that you mention your childhood hero being Albert Einstein. And
yes.
I love that. I love that. And I actually have a favorite Einstein quote, which would relate to all of this. But I always explain this because I teach about emotional health and well-being. Mm-hmm. Prana boosting is what I call raising your vibration. And it's focused on, those good vibes that you're talking about, choosing good vibes versus, bad vibes. And I say I love his quote where he says, you cannot solve a problem from the same consciousness that created it. You must learn to see the world anew. And I believe as parents, we must create a new level of consciousness. So my message is really raise your vibration, raise your family, change the world. Because I think they are so super sensitive. I mean, our kids respond to us energetically before we even say a word. They respond. We're so in tuned energetically.
Yes, and even when a couple is together for a while, think about it this way: your energetic communications start to improve because you can start having the same thoughts, or one person can start a sentence and the other one already knows, or a question, knows what it's all about even before you finish what you're saying, which is saying that once we get close to people, we not only hear the words you're saying, but we start to really tune into the vibration and resonate with it so we can feel what the other person is feeling. And dogs do this, as I said, because they're not listening to words. They're only reading the vibration. And is it in harmony or disharmony? That's the only way you can score it. Are the vibrations good vibes, in harmony, supporting health, or the vibrations causing noise, disharmony, which takes away health? And those are the primary signals, which then are translated by the brain into chemistry, which then goes to the 50 trillion cells in your skin-covered petri dish, and that chemistry regulates the genetics of those cells. So our thoughts control our genes, and when we change our thoughts, we change our genetic activity.
Right, and I think it's so important. I just want to bring up the fact that I believe it's so important, and I want parents and families and any human to understand that educating ourselves and about raising our awareness and raising our vibration and shifting what we've learned our entire lives is not about blaming or shaming anyone or guilting anyone, but it's about letting them know that there's new things to learn. There's new technology, there's new findings, there's new research, and we can all, take responsibility for our lives by stepping up and, learning that. So I'm trying to send the message of, what's really necessary to become a conscious, mindful, peaceful parent, but really just a human existing in the world, right?
Exactly. This is what the problems we face in our world today, and that's where your Einstein quote comes in. Look, we're facing all these crises here in our world, from economic, social, healthcare crisis, environmental crises, and all this. And we're facing what is called the sixth mass extinction of life. 5 times in the history of this planet, life was thriving, got wiped out. But the previous wipeouts of life were associated with things like comets or asteroids hitting the planet, or massive geological activity with earthquakes and volcanoes all at once, ending life and then starting all over again. 5 times has happened, and now we're in the 6th stage of losing species of organisms faster than in the previous mass extinctions. But the interesting part about it is science has recognized that the cause of the current mass extinction is human behavior. And it says, as Einstein quote says, well, if you want to change this crisis, the first thing you have to do is change your behavior. Can't keep using the same behavior, and that's what we're being called upon, and that's why all this new interesting information about health is really showing up now. Why? Because we have to change our understanding of who we are and how we behave and how this thing all unfolds, because we need to help not just our children but our planet recover from the unfortunate programming that almost all of us have already received, which is, as I said, most of it very negative.
Right. Absolutely. Negative and limiting. So, well, I so appreciate you explaining all of that to us. And I mean, I will continue to share with families and anyone that I work with your teachings, which are actually backed by scientific biological research. And I love where you say that energy, psychology, and lifestyle changes are preferable and overall more effective than pharmaceutical drugs
Oh, yes. You see, the chemistry that is running our body in the pharmaceutical industry is, oh, well, I can change the chemistry. And I said, yeah, but you don't understand. What is the original control of the chemistry? Why is the chemistry out of balance? Just because you want to change the chemistry, you didn't change what was the problem. The problem wasn't the chemistry. It's above the chemistry.
Right.
The chemistry is the result of the mind. So we try to say, well, leave your mind alone and try to change the chemistry. I go, well, that's not going to work because the mind is the ultimate control. And then you're going to try to use chemistry to offset it. Well, it doesn't generally work very well. In fact, it's terrible in many cases. So the real change you want to do is not change the chemistry, it's change the mind. The mind will then provide the right chemistry rather than you being the chemist saying, this is the chemical I need. It's like, no, you don't even know what chemical you need. What you need is to change your thoughts, and the chemistry will align itself and return health to you. And that's the move that we're on right now. The work that you're doing, the work that I'm doing, is to say, wait, I don't need to physically intervene in my life. I need to intellectually and consciously and energetically intervene, because that's the highest level of control. And that's where the source of all the issues come from, at the highest level, not in the middle.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I'm so grateful for all the work that you do, and it really helps support everything that I believed. And, sometimes I'll tell my girls, I feel like giving up. It's so hard. I feel like I'm going against everyone, and I feel like I'm trying to change, everything I ever learned and ever knew in my entire life. And it's challenging, but together I know we can all do it, and I know we can help each other to bridge that gap, to move into these higher states of consciousness.
That's what our evolutionary necessity is right now. It's not changing our physical body, it's changing our consciousness. Evolution is a change in consciousness. And we are beginning to realize that, yes, we must change the way we respond to each other and the way we interact with each other and the planet, because the current consciousness is actually the cause of the problem. So what you're working on is what everyone must be working on, is to change our consciousness so that we're in harmony with the world, rather than, as we see it right now, is being antagonistic to the world. We have to learn to be in harmony with it. And that's nature is asking us to do that, or giving us the option of going extinct, which I prefer to be here, actually. So, yeah, different thought.
Right, me too. Well, thank you so much. I value your time, and I just want to say I appreciate you being with us, and I encourage all of our listeners to listen and connect with you, and visit your website and read your books. And I know you have membership, and you have so many available resources and social media, and I'll list all of that on my website so they can access your resources page as well, because then they can find the tools to go in and edit these subconscious programs.
Absolutely. That's where self-empowerment comes from. Dealing with ourselves, not trying to change the outside, is trying to change our own inside, is where all the hope of the future comes from.
Right, and becoming harmonious within ourselves so we can, take that out into the world with us, right?
Absolutely, Tina. That's exactly it.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Bruce. I really appreciate the connection today, and I hope to interact with you again really soon.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak with you, but more importantly, as well as all the people online, because the whole idea is knowledge is power, and we have been disempowered because we haven't really had the adequate knowledge of who we are. But now it's showing up in science that we are indeed powerful, and this is the cue for us to move to the next level of our evolution. So I want to thank your audience because every one of us is a participant in this evolution. Every one of us has to do something, fix ourselves, and then the world will take care of itself after that. So thank you for this opportunity.
Right. Okay, thank you too. I want to say namaste to you.
Namaste to you and to everyone out there. Thank you, and we'll talk again soon.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. Goodbye.
Goodbye.